you can't stretch to the moon on every topic. So there's an element of focus first. Team, any business, to be ultimately be able to go fast. Where are we heading in the big picture? People are running in all different directions fast, and the company doesn't move fast. As you get more responsibility, maybe you take over a team or you get a larger organization. Hopefully you learn and you start practicing more and more that you're actually going to get better results, faster results, a more excited team if you can bring them along through questions and not being the problem solver yourself on everything. And so try and organize yourselves where you're really focusing your personal time to be there fully and fully present for the crystal moments.
Welcome to the Cultivating Leaders Podcast. I'm your host and curiosity captain, Nicole Ursig. If you are ready to lead better, think bigger, and grow faster, you're in the right place. We bring you real conversations with top leaders across food and agriculture, focused on the practical skills and mindsets you need to lead in today's environment. Today's guest is a leader known for setting bold visions and building teams that actually deliver on them. Eric Hansotia, Chairman, President, and CEO of AGCO Corporation, leads a global organization focused on advancing the future of agriculture through innovation, technology, and a farmer-first mindset. Throughout his career, Eric has been recognized for setting ambitious goals, driving operational excellence, and leading teams through complex transformation. If you're leading people, setting direction, or trying to turn strategy into action, this conversation will challenge how you think about goals and execution. Welcome to the pod, Eric.
Well, it's so great to be here with you, Nicole. I just love talking about agriculture and leadership and what we can all do to make it better.
Oh my gosh, well, you're in the right spot then. This is the podcast to be on. So glad you're here. Okay, so I always ask guests, what did I miss from your bio? Like if I was someone who was, I'm just tuning in, maybe I've stalked you on LinkedIn. What do I not know yet about Eric?
Well, I mean, for this audience, it's maybe relevant to say I grew up working on a dairy farm in central Wisconsin, was in 4-H and FFA, and kind of jumped into every kind of little competition I could with showing cattle and raising chickens and sheep and doing all kinds of projects. And it was a great way to learn a lot about agriculture, but it was a great way to learn a lot about leadership. And so I think that's probably a common background to many of your listeners. And then spent the rest of my time in the ag equipment business, and more it's morphing in from ag equipment to ag technology. And so that's what I love. I love understanding farmers' problems and finding intersecting innovation to help them find that, whether it's on the product or with data or with changing how we do business. So that's kind of what makes me tick.
Appreciate the background. That's awesome. So growing up on the dairy farm, what did you want to be when you grew up? Did you think it was going to be CEO of AGCO?
No, not at all. Not even close to that. In fact, for many years, I thought I was going to pursue being a farmer. And I was taking classes, in high school, and they ended up being fairly heavy in math and sciences and so on. And my guidance counselor suggested, well, why don't you get a degree in engineering? And I was planning to go to college anyway. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. And that really, I fell in love with engineering, the problem solving nature of the tools and the innovation it brought. And so that really lit my fuse, and I pursued an engineering direction. I was engineering in the beginning of my career and then grew into business leadership. But you still use a lot of those same tools. You use a lot about understanding how a farm operates and what's important to a farmer, and you use a lot about the engineering principles of solving problems and how things work. So that's kind of how I got here. But didn't have any aspiration of being CEO. It was just kind of like, I want to do a really good job at what I'm doing and try and create a little bit of excellence here. And then that led to one thing after another, and threw myself into new opportunities. Kind of restarted, did one thing for a little while, and then would try something very different within the same company, and built a broad base. And one thing led to another, and ultimately I had the opportunity to have this wonderful job, which is, to me, my favorite job in the world. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
That's great to hear, because I think sometimes obviously people can look at roles like this and think that's so high pressure or Gosh, you've had to have your eye on that for a really long time. So give us a little bit of background, Eric, of okay, so you went into this with trying to help farmers solving problems using your engineering degree. What did that journey look like from, okay, now I want to grow both as a person up kind of the corporate ladder, but like I can tell you're still in it for the farmer at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I tell maybe people earlier in their career is, there's I think, a false advice that sometimes schools give younger employees or students, and that is to kind of map out their career path. And I tell them, absolutely don't do that. Do the opposite. Instead of trying to look forward, I want this job and then that job and then that job, and that's what I want to do. Look at the job you're in and say, how can I generate excellence in this? If I'm in finance, how do I close the books 3 days faster? If I'm in quality, how do I cut my quality issues in half? If I'm in engineering, how do I design something that's not been designed before? Create excellence in whatever you're doing. And everybody can in one way or another. And then throw yourself into something new. Move from one kind of activity to another. Build a set of experiences and a set of skills. And then create excellence in that second one. And if you do that time after time, then pretty much you get a reputation of that, and people say, well, we want this person to take on more and more responsibility, and opportunities open up. It's a much better way to grow yourself and to build a team around you than to try and map your career. In fact, there's a quote that is on a plaque that I still have in my office. I got from my roommate, my best friend, when I was going to college, and it says, "Excellence is the result of caring more than others think is wise, risking more than others think is safe, dreaming more than others think is practical, and expecting more than others think is possible." And I've tried to live that way, and I've tried to lead that way. I think it's been something that's resonated for me, and hopefully it'll spark something for others as well.
Yeah, I love that. You actually stole my next question because I was going to ask, how do you define excellence? But I love that you've got a plaque that you can see every day right there in your office.
Yes.
Have you always been an ambitious person? I'm curious about that.
I would say yes. I mean, when I look back to my days in 4-H or my days in FFA or sports or other things, I always looked to do a couple things. And I didn't think about it at that time, but when I look back on it, there's an element of leadership of when there's a group standing around or trying to figure out what to do. I tried to rally the crew and gather up the ideas and establish a path forward. And so I think there was an element of leadership that was a little bit naturally there, but was groomed over time through those organizations. I think they do a great job of putting you in situations, public speaking, all kinds of different skill building activities to build your confidence and build your skill sets. So yeah, I think I've always had ambition, but I'm happy. I think that as I look back, I tried to channel that ambition into what was right in front of me and not kind of look out too far down the road.
So, would you say, is setting ambitious goals, is that what helps you with your, like, as you think about your personal career trajectory and also the teams that you lead? Is setting ambitious goals a key to success? Or um, how do you know when to stretch yourself enough there where, like, maybe I'm getting too far ahead and pie in the sky versus like pushing myself hard enough that that feels maybe just right enough out of reach?
Well, I think there's a couple things in your question. You can't stretch to the moon on every topic. So there's an element of focus first and saying what really matters, what's going to really make a big difference to farmers, what's going to help our company get stronger, what's going to help our team feel more energized about what they're doing. So depending on the topic, you say, well, what's the big thing right now? And on that big thing, let's think big. And so I really like setting on the most important topic a transformational goal as opposed to a evolving goal. So a transformational goal, most of the team, including myself, often doesn't know exactly how to get there. So it's a big stretch. And what I like to use is something called right to left thinking instead of left to right. So a traditional evolving goal will be left to right. Now, the reason I say that is people read left to right. They read one word and then the next word and the next word. So it's kind of a natural evolution of where I've come from. So that's left to right. But right to left means I need to jump out into the future. Maybe it's a year away, maybe it's 3 years away, and say, what does the world look like that we're setting our aspiration to achieve out there? We say, is that exciting? Yes, that's an exciting place. Great. Now, if we get everybody rallied around that spot, like now let's work our way back from that spot to today and figure out how to put the actions in place to get there. So that's right to left. Jump out into the future, having no idea how to get there first, but getting excited about that outcome and then building the plan to achieve it. Recognizing that you may not have every, there's a river to cross. You may not have every stone to find to get across the river. But if you get enough of them, you can say, well, let's get going and we'll figure the rest of them out on the way. So it's having some stretch remaining and not have everything predefined is reality in today's world, because it's largely about speed. I'm a big believer that speed beats slow, not big beats small or small beats big. I think it's all about speed. And so setting big aspirational goals, quickly getting the team around it, and then quickly making progress toward that goal is some of the keys to success.
Oh, I have so many questions in there. I want to come back to the speed one, especially as we think about scale. But I'm curious, from a setting that transformative goal, how many transformative goals can I have, either if, like, let's say I'm a leader of a division or a business unit, or from your perspective, as you think about, like, how many transformative goals can AGCO truly have at one time?
So AGCO can have a small number of them. Any given group probably can only have one, maximum two, but generally one. Focus is so critical. So to go fast and to really get everybody focused and aligned and marching together, having one primary goal for that group is best. But now everybody doesn't do the same thing in a big company, and so you could have the product development group trying to set a stretch goal and a breakthrough improvement on that side, and then those customer acquisition group maybe doing something different and stretching themselves in that direction. So you can manage a few of them. At the beginning of the year, if I get tactical about it, I create a little table and I say, you know, one goal is always about people. So we all share that. I'm talking about for my senior leadership team, where we start. One goal is about people. And then one goal is about business results. So those two are standard every time. And then you have 2 or 3 columns for transformation. Now, it could be that you're finishing up the last one and you're starting the next one, or you're supporting someone else. So you don't always fill all 3 boxes in, but there's 3 spots there. And then what I like to do is look for linkage, where the engineering group maybe is needing to support the purchasing group and redesigning for a new supply base or something like that. So I get that matrix and the whole team builds that together just before the beginning of the year. And then we use that to cascade through the organization, say everybody's goals should feed up to these. So what that tells you is it forces focus. It forces a real concentration on the things that really matter the most right now.
So you have a framework for focused goals, and what you said though about speed is that speed is what wins, and it doesn't matter necessarily scale. So, as someone who leads a very large corporate organization, tell me how you maintain speed, because I think bigger organizations often have a reputation for their big ships. They turn slowly. You can't move as fast, sometimes even internally, right? Like, it's hard to get things done here because there's so many layers of red tape or things like that.
Well, there's a few elements I would suggest that you need to have in place on any team, any business, to ultimately be able to go fast. And it creates some homework up front. So first of all, you all have to agree, where are we heading in the big picture? What is our aspiration? So some people call it a purpose. Then in a shorter term, that's the purpose of the company for multi-years. Then the goals for that year. So you got to define the destination and work on getting everybody rallied around that. It's like we understand what it looks like. We understand how it's different than today. We understand how we're going to measure it. We understand some of the elements on how to get there. So spending time getting everybody clear on that is super important, because if they know where to head and then they know somewhat of guardrails about where they can run, then the decisions can happen as close to the front line as possible, as close to the farmer, as close to our production workers, as close to our suppliers. That's where all the detail is, and things are happening real time, and you want it to be able to push as many of the decisions to those frontline folks, so that you can be fast. And in order to do that, you just got to have everybody clear. If you have no plan and no direction, then people are running in all different directions fast, and the company doesn't move fast, because it's like everybody rowing in a different direction in a boat. that doesn't work very well. The boat only moves fast, no matter how fast you're paddling, if we're all paddling in the same direction. Getting everybody focused on a direction, I think, is really clear, key. Um, Getting them clear on decision rights, things like that, getting them clear on their guardrails. I have a saying that I like to use in the company. It says success equals P times A. And I'll unpack that means. The success of any transformation or change effort is the product of how strong is the plan, that's P, let's give ourselves a score of 1 to 10, multiplied by how strong is the A, the acceptance of the organization, the acceptance of the group. And more often than not, when I see change efforts fail, it's not because we had a bad plan. People came up with a great idea. Maybe they enrolled a lot of people around them, but they didn't enroll the people who are going to be impacted, the acceptance of those going through the change. And so the A is the part that usually is the soft underbelly of the failed outcome. And so that's where I talked about getting clear on where we're going. It's also getting people enrolled and accepting of the change process of where we're going and why that's so much better than where we're coming from. So success equals P time A is something I use all the time. Hardly, hardly a few weeks go by without me using that in a meeting somewhere to get people focused on where to apply their energy.
Love that. It sounds like you've got a really solid framework of just different pieces, whether it's goals or here's your own kind of recipe to success. I'm curious, Eric, especially in a change, like a change example or something big you've done in your career where it's like, hey, here's where I learned this lesson, or here's why you've been able to apply some of these things to make a large change like that happen in an organization.
Yeah, I look, all the way along, I was, you look on the individual contributor roles I had originally, which many folks have on this call, perhaps, and then you get involved with project teams and so on. So I was fortunate enough to learn some of these change management toolbox items about how to think about a stakeholder analysis, who needs to get from where they are today to the future place, project charters, discipline, project management, those kinds of toolboxes, facilitation skills. Those core skills I learned early in my career. I was very lucky to be able to go through some training on those. And there's a kind of a process improvement focus at that time. And so based on that, I able to build those muscles. But I still use those tools today, and I still try and help others use those tools. And so it's a tool set that serves you no matter where you end up and what kind of role you have. The skill sets of leading change are fundamental. And so for anybody that is interested in this type of topic, I would encourage them to skill up on those types of things wherever they are in their career.
Yeah. Well, and I think change is inevitable no matter what job you're in or no matter what level you're leading at, and learning how to manage through change, whether it's for yourself or for leading other people through change can be helpful no matter what role you're in.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things you talked about was really driving decisions down. And I think that is so much easier said than done and can be really uncomfortable for some leaders because I worked with a leader who once said, the higher I got in the organization, the less decisions I actually get to make. Um, and he's like,
Yeah.
no one thinks it, but I make less decisions today than I used to. How do you get comfortable with that as a leader, knowing that especially maybe when you may know more than your team or you may be experienced, but like understanding when and how to define, like, this is no longer my decision as the leader, this is the team's decision, or this is someone who reports to me's decision, not mine.
Yeah, it's an evolution through one's career. I think it's a combination of, as you continue to maybe grow experiences and grow skills, you also have to start letting go. And early in your career, you're rewarded about what questions did I answer? Like, did I have the solution to the problem, and can I solve something? And and then as you grow in your career and you start managing teams or getting a little bit larger responsibility, you quickly realize in order to have that success equals P times A, in order to build acceptance, you need to bring a team along through questions as opposed to telling them, well, here's the answer to this and this and this. Now please go do it. So if you change your behavior and work more through questions than solving the problem yourself, you start seeing that teams actually do a great job of being more responsive than you could ever be because they're right there where the information is, and being faster. And so if you can trust that a little bit, you see the results, you can say, okay, I need to do more of that. But it does require letting go.
That can be really scary, I think, sometimes for leaders. And I'm curious your perspective if you struggled with this at all, and you can tell us that you didn't, but any fear of having to trust, especially high stakes decisions to other people when you're the one accountable for what the outcome is, right? Like, again, and the higher I think you go in leadership, the more pressure there is on some of this kind of stuff. But how do you overcome that fear of trusting someone, even if you do trust them and you appreciate that them as an employee or a team member, but someone who's dealing with really high stakes decisions and saying like, "Hey, I got to back out of this and I can't be involved." That's they're gonna take it and handle it.
Yeah, maybe there's two thoughts that come to mind around this topic. One is about building trust in the team around you and your trust in them. And then the other one is about practicing the different behaviors yourself. So let's tackle both of those. Let's start with tackling the evolving your own behavior. You know, when you're starting off in your career, you're typically rewarded by being a problem solving, having the answer, knowing the solution yourself. And so you're like, ooh, nice job, Sally, nice job, Tom. And you sometimes get rewarded for that. But then as you get more responsibility, maybe you take over a team or you get in a larger organization, um, hopefully you learn and you start practicing more and more that you're actually going to get better results, faster results, a more excited team if you can bring them along through questions and not being the problem solver yourself on everything. If you just tell them, hey, here's the problem solutions to this and this and this, now please go do it, um, they become just doers of what you told them. And when the world around them changes, they keep going down the path that you told them when really they needed to pivot. Whereas if instead bring them along through a series of questions, they learn the why. They have gone through the discovery process of arriving on that path. And now they understand the ultimate why. So if the world changes and the conditions change, they can pivot and take different actions. And if you practice that as you're coming up through the organization through your career, you start realizing, wow, these are way better outcomes, way faster outcomes, and the team enjoys it a lot more. So I would encourage you, practice it on the lower impact topics, practice it frequently. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes the team gets it right and wrong. So you can practice those behaviors and try and fine tune it so that when that big one comes along that you're referring to, you've already built up the muscle to maybe do it a little bit more skillfully. And the second one is about trust. And it's a little bit parallel path that, you know, trust is built through kind of three layers, I think. The first one's benevolence, like they need to know that you care about them. Secondly, it's about honesty. They need to know that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. And then finally, you get to the competence of, can I do this well? Can I deliver results? But you have to build those first two building blocks before you get to the competency. And so if you can build a climate of trust among your team, along with these kind of adoption of these different principles of more questions than giving them the answer, I think then you find that it's a multiplier, that you're getting a lot more decisions made, you're moving at a lot faster pace, and the team is developing and growing around you. I mean, one last thing to thought about. The other element is, I kind of talked a lot about results and maybe a little bit about trust too, but inherent in all of that is what kind of culture are you creating around you? If you are a results person, whether you got there through answers or questions, but you didn't really care about the people around you, you get that reputation. So then the next time there's a project that comes along, if you're just the results guy or the results gal, nobody really wants to join that team. Whereas if you're the person who's developing the team around you, helping them understand the why, giving them the autonomy to make decisions, allowing them to go fast, fail sometimes, and help mentor them through that, you're like, wow, I'm a much better leader when I joined his or her team than when I started, than at the end than when I started. And I've grown myself. I enjoyed the journey. The next time that a project comes up with that leader, I want to be on that team. And suddenly you have all the best and the brightest trying to join you. So there's the element of the tools creating it, but then just the ability to draw great talent is maybe a side benefit that is another multiplier. And if you can string these together, that's what makes you, a more powerful leader than you could ever be on your own.
Absolutely. So, how do you decide, Eric, what decisions you keep as CEO? What ones still land and are your responsibility versus what you driving the decisions down either to the level of the customer or deeper within your team itself?
Maybe two thoughts there. One would be there's this phrase, do what only you can do. And so there's a number of things I can do or you can do. And and I could end up doing, and many of them I kind of enjoy doing. So you end up going down that path. But if you run through those things with a different filter and you say, what are the ones only I can do? Now, maybe it's because I have access to different information. I have access to different perspective because I've had discussions with the board or a supplier, whatever it happens to be. Like, I need to make that one because nobody else has been in the intersection of information or whatever. Those are the ones I have to call, or they have such an impact to the long-term um, direction of the company, and that's really my purview as opposed to any of the individual business leaders. So I try and zero in on spending my time on those things only I can do. Now, that's the primary filter. Then there's also other things where I'll dive in to a given business area and try and help with a reset, which a little bit falls in that same category. Do the things only you can do. But there may be a business that's going along fine, but then I'll try and step in and say, hey, have we thought about where's our next breakthrough? And my job is to help lift their eyes instead of kind of looking down at the ground at what's right in front of us. Every now and then figure out when it's the right time to lift their eyes up and say, where's the next breakthrough? How do we create a whole different outcome for our farmers? It could be on product, it could be on distribution strategy, it could be how we help them with data and all those things. So I'd say those are the two primary things. And then the third one is talent. I spend a lot of my time trying to mentor the existing talent and groom the future talent to make sure we've got a pipeline several layers deep with the rest of the leadership team that we're grooming and helping, giving them different experiences, training, mentoring, teaching, coaching, like people did for me, to help them continue to grow.
That's awesome. And it's such a cool perspective to hear. So, as you think about driving decisions down, that also doesn't work without creating accountability and ownership. So, how do you do that with your leaders, right? Because if they're owning the decision, obviously, as the head honcho, right? Like you're ultimately responsible, but like they take the responsibility themselves because they made the call. So, how do you create a positive culture around accountability and truly owning at either areas of the business or ownership in your job and the decisions that you get to make?
I'd say probably two things. One is broader and one's more specific. The broader one is setting the culture. So as a leadership team, we established the culture when we reset the strategy when our team came in. And we focused on three things. We want to be the most farmer-focused company in the industry, and think of everything through the lens of what makes the farmer more profitable, more successful, easier to do their job. Number two is team up. And so instead of optimizing manufacturing or optimizing Brazil from the Brazil team or the manufacturing team, we want to optimize the company first. And so working across functions, across geographies to make sure we're optimizing the whole. And then the third one is probably the hardest one, and that's speak up. And essentially, we want to be able to raise a challenging topic respectfully and debate respectfully, so you can raise risk ideas, build on someone else's idea, challenge the status quo, all of those types of things. But the mixture of those three is really powerful. Everything we're all on the same side of the table. We're not on you and me. We're all on the same side of the table trying to serve the farmer. We're trying to do that in one team, so they don't care about departments, they don't care about functions or business. They just care about what we gave them and how it all works together. And then how do we make sure we keep challenging ourselves? That's the way to be innovative and fast. So setting the culture, constantly reinforcing that, recognizing people when they do it well, mentoring people when they don't have it quite right, is the first category. And then the second one is probably about, again, getting people clear on the objective. So we talked about the outcome earlier, whether that's in the purpose or in our annual goals, but I'll maybe bring one more thing. There's a difference between, if you picture the image of, there's the game on the field, whether that's football or baseball or soccer or whatever, and then there's the scoreboard. Those are two very different things. In order for the team to do well in the field, they have to understand the scoreboard. So early work on the scoreboard about, if we agree on what we're going to get, where we want to go to, then how do we keep score? What are we going to measure? What are the incentives around those measures? Because sometimes there's some negative behavior that comes with that. But really thinking about the scoreboard up front and having a scoreboard discussion. Now, the scoreboard doesn't change what happens on the field. It just enables the team to understand how score is being kept and what they need to do to win. So it's not going to change the game on the field, but it enables the team to go. So there's a difference between a scoreboard discussion and a team playing discussion, how you help the team succeed. But working on the scoreboard up front, it provides clarity and provides focus.
I like that. How do you define the scoreboard? Like, I'm curious, and I feel like it can look different at different levels, but maybe for like, what's a scoreboard going to look like for yourself, but also maybe different layers of leaders in your organization?
Again, it's about focus. So it's a few number of measures that everybody can remember. And I'd like to be able to walk down the halls and say, hey, Nicole, what are our three big things that are in your area? And you can hit bam, bam, bam. And you say, where are we relative to our goals? And you're like, well, we're here and we need to go there. Great. Everybody needs to be able to internalize that and remember it. Ideally, it's a integration of various items. So there should be something for the farmer, something for the employee, and something for the investor at the top of the company. But then as you go through, it's also that way. And then as you get down into the organization, you'd like to have some leading indicators and some lagging indicators. So sometimes lagging means it already happened and what was the result. So that may be the financials or our warranty results or something like that. It already happened. What you'd like to do is have some leading indicators to say, if we do these things, we're going to get a better result. So if I work on changing this activity, that will lead to better financials or better quality results or something like that. So few measures and then a mixture of leading and lagging.
I like that. It sounds like you've maybe read 4 C's of execution.
Yes, exactly.
Book plug for anyone who's listening. I did not love reading it, but it talks about everything that Eric is talking about right now.
Yes.
Also a recommendation from one of our other podcast guests that we have had in the past.
Heard it with somebody yesterday. So it's great, timeless principles. So good, good,
Yes,
good.
yes. I had an executive early in my career hand it to me, and he's like, "This is like, you got to read this book. It's great." And it was. I learned a lot, and it was very much worth the read. That time in my career, I was very creative, and so it was a very boring business read. But I can look back and be like, "Oh man, those were the things that he was talking about. Here's how it applies now."
Very good. I agree. I think they're timeless.
Yes, absolutely. I've got one on the shelf somewhere here, a version of it. So Eric, you've talked about a lot of the different things that are keys to being successful at AGCO and the ways that you create frameworks for leaders and kind of your culture. So I'm curious from your perspective, what is the kind of leader that you are looking for? You talked about part of your role being talent development. So who's the kind of person that you would look to develop or that you are like, this is the kind of person that I want to grow in my organization?
Yeah, some of the attributes when we're asking about that person, I'd like them to be known as a problem solver, a team builder, someone who's got resilience. So they faced adversity and they came through it. So sometimes people haven't. I love to see actually a setback and then a recovery. So and then how did they treat people around them? So those are some of the elements. There's a culture I look for. Another model I like to talk to people about is a bullseye. So there's an outer ring, a center ring, and a middle ring. And the outer ring I call the circle of concern. The inner ring is the circle of control, and the one in between is the circle of influence. And there's certain people that just get stuck in that circle of concern. And essentially what that means is, like when you go to a party or block party or something like that, and you mingle with different various people, what are the first things that usually get discussed? Well, it's politics and sports and the weather and things like that. And it's usually the negative side. Oh, my politician did this negative thing. Oh, it's probably going to rain. Oh, my sports team lost. And you can just wallow in that. And there's no, you really can't do much about those things. Whereas I love people who will take that topic and drive it into the circle of control. And so you say, well, I can't control if it's going to rain, but what can I do? I brought an umbrella, or I've planned for an indoor venue or something like that. And at minimum, you can at least influence. So this whole notion of I control my destiny, I control the environment around me, and I have an attitude like that. That's energizing. That brings people along. The other one actually drags people down. If you just have complainers and people in the circle of concern all the time, it's kind of it saps the energy out of the team. So that's maybe another dimension that doesn't show up so much on profiles as often. But that's you get a reputation one way or the other, and I like to foster people moving in towards circle of control. It's much more motivating.
Yeah. How do you coach people who, like, let's say, are really passionate about the work that they do, right? So I think you said one of your pillars of culture, right, is being the most farmer focused organization. Maybe I'm someone who's really passionate about farmers and I work in your organization and we've talked about a culture of accountability and I'm frustrated and I think we could do better. And I'm in that area of concern. But I maybe don't realize it because I have all of these like ancillary things, right? Like the intention behind it is good. But if I'm whining or complaining or being frustrated about what we could do better or why things aren't going the way that I want them to, how do you coach folks like that who are obviously it's coming from a good place of passion, but they're stuck in that outer ring of concern versus like taking the good parts of that and driving it to the center?
Yeah, I'm not sure there's an exactly the right way, but I can share with you a story that I think about. So I, there's a group in our organization that is just fantastic. I mean, there's lots of groups that are fantastic, but I'll just talk about this one experience I had. So I was meeting with a group of engineers, and then later in the day, I was meeting with a group of salespeople, and I heard that they were dissatisfied. And so I went in the room, sat with them, and said, "Hey, let's talk about where things are at. How are you feeling?" Da da da. And it started down this circle of concern route. And so I'm like, okay. And I just listened for a while and absorbed and let them go. And they like energy and this is wrong and this is holding us back and da da da. Okay, yep. And I just wrote them all down, showed that I was listening and I was hearing it, and then after a little while, people needed to just get that off their chest. So I didn't feed it, but I showed them through active listening that I wasn't dismissing it. And so then we kind of got to a natural pause and say, okay, these are all legit. This is exactly how you feel, and I understand that. We don't want to stay in this list very long. So are there any of these that we can do something that we can change? Can we change the outcome on any of this list? Let's just pick one. And so we picked one, and then one person said, "Well, if we could do," and I think I started it. I think I said, "Well, what if we did this? This change. What if you participated?" Okay, and then it started working around the room, and it started spiraling back up. So the beginning of the meeting started spiraling down. Paused. I kind of nudged it in the right direction, and then it started spiraling up. And I said, "Okay, let's take one more." And it started spiraling up. And then I paused and said, now let's observe what happened here. We were in, and I drew the circle of concern, circle of control. I said, diagnosing what just occurred, we were all in that circle of concern. You figured out a way to get out of that and get in the circle of control. Do you think we could do that with everything on the list? And now they're motivated, like, yes. And I've circled back with that team a few times, and they're self-motivating now, and they've been able to diagnose when they're falling into that spot because it's human nature. It's always going to happen at some point, but they can catch themselves and help each other trigger to go back up. So I did that with an engineering group, I did that with a sales group. It's you don't want to be defensive right off the gate and say, hey, that's not real. Your feelings isn't appropriate. You're just a complainer. That just it's an argument. Now they have to justify why they feel that way. So I think there's a little that's how I did it. I think there's probably a lot of ways, but that's how I did it that time, and it seemed like it helped that team see it through a different lens.
Yeah, I appreciate that because it highlights too how I think there's an important part of the process of when you are having that concern and there's a human emotion aspect to it of sometimes it does have to get out. And so there's a reason for that circle of concern as long as you just don't stay there forever.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Okay, so I'm curious, we talked about the two like with the bullseye and the outer ring. When is it okay to be when does that circle of influence come in?
Well, not everything is all the way in your control. So you may be able to say, well, at least I can influence the outcome. And so you can say it, maybe I can, if there's an issue that there's a problem with, let's say engineering from one function to another. Engineering gives manufacturing drawings that don't have clear tolerances or don't have good work instructions or something like that. Let's just use that as a hypothetical. And you say, well, I can't go change those drawings myself. Engineering has to do that. You say, well, but you could influence it. You could maybe go over there, explain the issues it's causing for you, maybe ask them for a guide, maybe you co-work on creating a little template. Now you've influenced them. They're still in control, but you've influenced them on giving a different perspective and maybe a different approach to that will help out your situation. So you may not always be able to control it, but you can almost always influence it.
Yeah, I like that. So it may not be in your control, but there's always something you can do. And so even if you don't control the decision or the outcome, okay, that's when you move to influence. I like that.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well said.
Awesome. Okay, Eric, we are going to move into a segment that we call rapid fire, and it's where you do your best to answer in short, quick answers, and I do my best not to ask follow-up questions.
Okay.
Okay, so Eric, what is one word you would use to describe a great leader?
Inspirational.
What is something you had to learn or that you had to unlearn to become a more effective leader?
The toolbox of leading change.
What is a belief about leadership you've changed your mind on?
I think early it was about a focus on having the right answer. And later on, it was a focus on using the right questions to be able to get the team to the right answer. So I had to unlearn my skills all the way through. It was about getting the right answer and had to shift my style.
What is one thing you wish you had known before becoming a CEO?
Yeah, I think maybe the breadth of things that come into this role is enormous, unlike any other job I've had. And so it took me a little while to really get good at prioritization and doing only the things I can do. So I've got this mental model of if you have a jar and you have rocks, pebbles, and sand, you better fill it with the rocks first, meaning the big issues, and focus on those first, and not get tied down with all the sand that comes at you. And I think everybody's got a version of that. Got to focus on the big rocks.
Absolutely. And there's only so many big rocks that can fit in the jar as well.
Exactly. And if you put the sand in first, the big rocks don't fit at all.
Hmm.
You can picture that as a physical representation of leadership.
What is one leadership skill you are currently working on?
I think that one's about AI. Took my whole team off site for 3 days and we immersed in AI, learning about it, figuring out where our priorities are going to be, where our rocks are versus our sand, um, and how do we set the plan and enroll the organization to do it. It's moving so fast. It's one of the most exciting things that I think any of us will go through, but you've got to apply yourself and really focus on it.
Absolutely. All of us are in this wave of learning about that right now. So love that example. Thank you for that. Now we're going to move to a segment at AFA. We love hot takes, is what we call them. So, hot takes or bold opinions, and this can be either about agriculture or about the agriculture industry or about leadership in general. And so, Eric, I am curious, what is a hot take that you have about agriculture or leadership?
Well, about agriculture, I'd say that two of them that our AGCO is really trying to serve farmers well at but they're different than most of the rest of the industry, most other industries in general, and that's retrofit technology would be one, and serving the farmer on their farm would be the other. We call that farmer core. So retrofit means that instead of having the farmer have to buy a brand new machine, a brand new planter, a brand new sprayer to get the latest technology, instead we will sell them a kit that they can put on their existing machine. And it doesn't even have to be one they bought from us. It could be from the competitive brands, but we'll upgrade that machine to have new capabilities, the latest and greatest, often better than you can get from the factory. and give that machine that's still got physical life in it, brand new technology life. And so that's a way where we can serve every farmer out there instead of just the farmers that happen to bought our technology. So that'd be one. And then the other one is, farming is still a very traditional brick and mortar service business where you go to the dealership for researching a machine, buying your machine, getting your parts, getting your service, getting your financing, all of that. And we said, boy, farmers are getting so much more online. They're getting served in a convenient way for other things. Why don't we serve them in a convenient way for our stuff? And so we created this thing called Farmer Core, and it's essentially we do everything on the farm. So we created digital tools where a farmer can research their machines, configure it online, order their parts online, order service online, do all that. But then we remotely monitor the machines, and when there's maintenance to be done or service to be done, we come out to the farm and do it on the farm. We don't have the farmer come to the business comes to the farmer. And so those are both breaking the mold, not only within agriculture, but Mercedes doesn't design technology for BMW. So we think we've really rewired our company to be able to serve all farmers in the most convenient way that makes them more profitable. So those are two in agriculture that I think break the mold.
I like that. I was like, I'm not sure that's a hot take. And then I realized in the context of what you're talking about, yes, it's innovative, it's bold, it's different than the way that other people are working in agriculture. So I appreciate that. That's
Yeah,
different than any other hot take we've had. And it's really applied as a business strategy, which I think is cool.
great.
Okay, Eric, we are about to wrap up, but I just wanted to double check with you. Is there anything that we didn't get to cover or didn't get to talk about that you wanted us to, or anything else you want to add?
Maybe we talked a lot about business and leadership and goals and all those kinds of things, and I love that. And you're obviously a student of that and an expert in that. So this has been a great conversation. Maybe one last little nugget for people is separate from business results is about how do you keep your own balance, your personal balance. And so one of the things my family and I talk about are the difference between rubber moments and crystal moments. So you think about a rubber ball and a crystal ball. The rubber ball may be one of my daughter's 20 tennis matches or one of my son's 20 soccer matches. If I miss one, we can bounce back. It's okay. A crystal moment is a very special thing that if you drop it, it shatters and is lost. So that's graduation ceremony or the final match of the season or the one against that one school that we always have a battle against. And so try and organize yourselves where you're really focusing your personal time to be there fully present for the crystal moments. And if you prioritize, just like those rocks on your business goals, you have your rocks on your personal things. Manage your calendar, manage your priority, really look out into the future. I've already got several things scheduled into 2027. And I'm always trying to be out there in front to make sure I can protect the crystal moments whenever we can. Now, you don't hit that 100%, but you create a message to your family, to your friends that says, hey, I'm doing everything in my power to plan for those and be there for those. And because that's where life memories are really made is in those crystal moments. And so I think they're so important that you want to protect them. And at the end of your time, or at the end of the year, or end of your career, you can look back and say, you know what? We were together for those crystal moments, and I'm so thankful I was. You're not going to wish you were at one more meeting. You're going to wish you'd missed one less crystal moment. So prioritize them and manage your time accordingly.
Oh, I am so glad I asked, like, what else, Eric, because that is such a phenomenal example. And I think so many people, at least I've heard it a lot, right? The glass balls and plastic balls of like you can drop the plastic ones, but don't drop the glass ones. But your example of crystal moments versus rubber moments is so much more. I'd hate to use the word crystal, but it's so much more like clear and crisp as a visual, because thinking about those crystal moments from like a family aspect and like ones you want to keep and like have on the bookshelf, and how horrible it is when you think about a crystal shattering and that bounce back as well of the rubber ball. So love that. I'm now going to internalize it and steal it. And it's
Wonderful.
probably one of the best ways I've heard someone describe like the work-life balance question without getting too nuanced or uh I don't what do I want to say, like we've all heard like it's not possible or it's hard or that kind of thing, but such a great analogy for how to how to balance that
Well, thank you.
or how to prioritize it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And any given week may not be in balance. Any given, there's times where, you got to really go hard in this direction. And that might be on a personal thing. You've got a health issue and thing. And other times it might be a work thing. I got this deadline, this big thing's coming in. So not every day, not every week is balanced, but what you try and do is create balance in the total and prioritize around the crystal moments. So
Hmm.
that's,
Yeah.
that's it.
I like it. Collecting as many crystal moments as possible.
Exactly. Right on.
Well, great, Eric. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I have enjoyed learning from you and your experiences and the different things that, like the toolbox that you have built throughout your career. So I know that our audience has as well. So at AFA, we talk a lot about building bridges and connections with people. So where can people connect more with you or the work that AGCO is doing?
So it's lots of different ways. I've got a LinkedIn profile. You can also connect to the AGCO social media website on our web pages. I'm a pretty active LinkedIn user, but you can also reach us through the AGCO website and love to connect with folks. And if I can be helpful through what's out there, that'd be great. I try and share both business things about where I've been visiting teams and so on, and also some leadership thoughts along the way to help people from the mistakes I've made and the things I've learned along my journey.
Awesome. Well, I am sure you have now a couple, at least a few new followers on LinkedIn. So thank you so much, Eric, for joining us on the Cultivating Leaders podcast.
Boy, it's been a real treat. You represent such an impressive and important organization for the future of agriculture and leadership. So what you're doing here is very important. And to all your listeners, the pursuit that you are following, it couldn't be more noble. I mean, we're helping literally the farmers feed the world, and biofuel is going to be a bigger part of that. And so wouldn't want to be in any other industry. This is the industry that matters the most. And so congratulations for your interest in it. And I wish you that you got a little nugget here or there to help it go a little smoother for you.
Thanks for listening to the Cultivating Leaders podcast, where leaders grow. If this episode challenged your thinking, be sure to share it with someone else who is on a similar leadership journey. You can stay connected with the Cultivating Leaders podcast by following Ag Future America on social media or drop a comment in the episode description. We'll see you again on the next episode.